So Marathon got started this week. How is it doing? Guess that depends on who you ask. Hello, my gaming brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host at QuickBird Gaming, and I appreciate you tuning in for this episode of QuickBird News, where we talk about all the gaming news it's fit to cover. This week's episode is going to cover the first week of March, so from the 1st through the 7th. I'm going to apologize in advance. Where I live right now, everything is starting to bloom and the allergies are really kicking my butt. So I'm going to apologize for watery eyes, creaky voice, and occasional sniffle. I'll try to keep that to a minimum. We've got a lot to talk about. It just seems like right now there is so much gaming news that's coming at us. It's coming at us hard and fast, and it's tough to keep up with everything. But that's why you have me, to hit all the highlights. We got a lot, like I said, we got lots to talk about. We're going to talk about Resident Evil sales numbers, about an indie game that is absolutely blowing the doors off right now. Some disturbing news about Arc Raiders. We have some hardware and console news. As always, each story I talk about is linked down below. It's timestamped in the description box, so feel free to scroll down and jump to a story that interests you. All right, but before we get to all that, we got to talk about the big story of the week, and that is Marathon. So let's go see what the scoop is. Okay, I'm going to start with this GamesRant article from Thursday, March 5th. It is titled, Marathon Launches to Positive Reviews, but Fails to Dethrone Arc Raiders. Now, if you're unaware, Marathon launched on Thursday the 5th. It is an extraction shooter, similar to Arc Raiders or Escape from Tarkov. It is put out by the development studio Bungie, which is famous for early Halo and the games Destiny and Destiny 2. It is part of Sony, and this is part of Sony's live service push, one of many games they've been working on. And this game actually released. Its hype was somewhat limited. Well, not limited is not the right word. It was mixed because last year Marathon had a controversy over art that had been lifted for some of its backgrounds from an artist without attribution. Although that was settled, their early alpha playtest last summer did not go well, so they went back to the drawing board, and then they had their server slam last week, or maybe it was a week and a half ago, that was allowing people to test in, and it seemed like the buzz was pretty good, the pre-order numbers were pretty good, and here we are. And according to this article, they failed to dethrone Arc Raiders, which is probably going to be seen as their most direct competition. They said, while the long-awaited PvPvE shooter is finally available now on PlayStation 5, Xbox, and PC, Marathon Steam figures have failed to come close to that of Arc Raiders launch. So let's just kick over and look at the actual Steam database. Now, this is SteamDB for Marathon, and this is as of the evening, about 7 o'clock Mountain Time on Saturday, the 7th of March. So the game's been out for a little over 2 days. And you can see it's still clocking in. It had a peak of 88,000 players on its first day. And you can see it's kind of gone through the same cycle each of the weekend days. It's getting up to 78,000, got up to 73,000 earlier today, 78,000 yesterday. So the game, for one, it's not having the drop-off that Highguard had, which had 97,000 players and then dropped about 90% of its player count within a matter of a couple of days. Marathon has at least persisted there. It, obviously, because it's a $40 buy-in versus free-to-play, people who did buy it are probably either going to give it time to see if they like it, or they were expecting, they're Bungie fans, Destiny fans, so they were expecting it to be good and were willing to pay, so they're sticking with it. And so far, that's what it's looking like. Now, if I just compare it real quick to Arc Raiders, this is, again, as of the same time, and you can see this is their max count. I'll go to a 1 week count. They're hitting just under 100,000 to 200,000, 250,000-ish, 225,000 players each day. The max number showed that they, hit almost 500,000 back when they launched. Came close again, got up to 466,000 in January, and then it kind of slowly been tailing off. Not unusual for any game, as the diehards stick with it, but they're still hitting pretty good numbers, and Marathon hit about half that. I understand fully Steam is not the total measure of this, which is why I wanted to look at the ratings on the major platforms. On the Steam platform, you can see it's got a very positive rating and 90% of almost 10,000 user reviews in English, if you can't read that. I'd have to scroll down to look at the total. I've got to get that fixed. 12,000, 88% of 12,500 total user reviews. So still rating very well. If I look at it on the PlayStation Store, it's got a 4.7 out of 5 with almost 5,000 ratings. So that is good. And that's roughly equivalent to what it's scoring over on Steam. And then on Xbox, you got 510 ratings, and they didn't give a composite score, but it's over 4 stars. So overall, this game is doing quite well in the ratings. The people who are playing it and sticking with it are enjoying it. In general, on the major platforms, especially over on Steam, I'm not seeing a lot of this game sucks. That comes up here and there, but any game's going to get that. More than anything, I see very specific complaints. Some people talking about it being hard for a PvE or PvE or single player. I think there were some issues with Linux, some complaints about the UI and so forth, but it doesn't seem to be a unified problem that's knocking it down, and it's not constant. The gameplay sucks. The gameplay sucks. The gameplay sucks. From people I've watched playing it online, the universal feedback is that the gameplay loop is pretty good, and the complaints tend to lie in other areas. Now, some people have said this game's getting review bombed. I have to assume they're looking at the Metacritic score because the other platforms are not showing it. On Metacritic, the PS5 players are giving it a 4.4. It's worse on the other platforms. I think it was a 4.0 on Xbox and a 3.7 on PC when I looked. So Metacritic score, if you want to say the game's being review bombed, I think this is where they're talking about. And there are a lot of people saying that the game is no good, which to me, this doesn't really jive with the other platforms and their scoring. Now, my thoughts on Marathon all along is I didn't think this game was going to be an instant flop. People have been calling it Concord 3.0, that it was going to complete the trilogy after Concord and Highguard and so on. I gave it, I think as late as last week, I said it's a 50-50 chance. There is a lot of negativity about the game. There's a lot of positivity about the game. It's also entering a very crowded market where I think it's got a lot of competition. Again, specifically from Arc Raiders is going to be its most direct competition. And I didn't know how well it was going to stack up. This is a tough road to hoe. And based on these numbers, I guess that it might have sold 500,000 to 1 million copies already, based on the amount of people that are concurrently playing. That's not terrible, certainly by any stretch of the imagination, but I have to ask 2 questions. Even if the game does reach profitability, if it has already, or if it does, I have to ask 2 questions. Is it enough to justify its existence based on the amount of time and energy and money that was sunk into it? And the second question is it enough to justify Sony's $3.5 billion purchase of Bungie? I think those are much harder questions to answer. So I didn't think this game was going to fail right out of the gate, or I thought it had a better chance than the previous kind of games that's being compared to a lot online. And so far, it seems to be doing okay. People are generally talking positive about it. And the fact that it has a $40 buy-in gives it an advantage especially over Highguard, because it's already making back a significant amount of money if it's sold, 1 million copies already. But is it going to be enough? I can almost draw a direct line to Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed Shadows last year. I think ultimately Ubisoft came out and made the case that AC Shadows was profitable for the company. It was not profitable enough to prop up all their other losses, and they ultimately ended up having to split, into Vantage Studios with the 10-cent buy-in and so on. It was not enough. And I don't know if Marathon is going to be enough for either Bungie or Sony. That, I think, is where the larger question is going to be. I don't, and I'm an outsider for this. I don't play extraction shooters or team shooters really at all. So I'm an outsider looking in, kind of from a dispassionate perspective on this. I just want players to have games they enjoy. And it seems like right now a lot of people are enjoying this game. So I hope that it does continue. Now, Bungie is doing a few things in their favor. I'll go to this Eurogamer article from the 5th the day it released. Marathon promises to avoid stressful FOMO-inducing battle passes, and that there's no pay for power microtransactions. They've released additional information on their seasonal award passes, curbing the typical trend where such passes are phased out as new seasons are introduced. These will stay in game permanently for players in a model similar to Helldivers 2 and Halo Infinite. I think this is a great idea. The idea that battle passes are phased out is great for the suits. It's great for the bean counters and the money makers. It's not great for the players, and I think it ultimately leads to dissatisfaction. This does present its own challenges because ultimately, as more and more content is in there and introduced, like any live service type game, they have to balance around it for PvE and PvP, and now they won't be able to just erase things that might be overpowered, across the board and whatnot. They have to take that into consideration. But on balance, I think that's a better problem to have than pissing people off by taking away all the stuff they paid for. So they go into a little bit more about this, about the seasonal models and stuff in this. A lot of it I didn't really get because, again, like I said, I don't play these games, so I didn't understand all of it. But they are at least listening to the fans and trying to clarify. And I will amplify that point further by this Game Rant article from today on Saturday, March 7th. Bungie issues statement over controversial marathon microtransactions. Now, the gist of this is that if you this is not a strictly Bungie or Marathon problem. This is a live service AAA games industry problem. When you would go to buy a bundle, you spend the money, your real life money. You don't buy the items directly. You buy the game currency. In this case, it's called Lux. And for $15, you would get 1,500 Lux, which would be enough to buy a bundle. If you just wanted to buy a skin, they were 1,100 Lux. Or 1,120, I'm sorry. $10 would get you 1,100 Lux, which meant that in order to get that extra 20 points, you would have to spend another $5. And people would say, well, you'd have the other 480 or whatever it was left over. But the fact that you had to spend more real money that proportionally what these items cost, this has always been a sticking point. And this is why have always been people raising the notion that a game should charge exactly what if this cosmetic costs $10 or $9.99 in the game's currency, you should be able to spend $9.99 to get that currency and not have to spend $20 and have leftover if you don't want it. And Bungie has addressed that. They said they're giving a little more bonus Lux premium currency for the price of their $10 purchase. And while the amount is granted just over a hair what it was at launch, it could make a world of difference. They earned early criticism over their microtransactions, but the recent increase in Lux payout is likely to quash concerns. And then they come down here and they talk a little bit more about exactly what I just said. The amount in that is being bumped up from 1,100 to 1,120, which is enough for them to go ahead and buy a skin without having to spend more real-life money. So Bungie is listening to its players. It's addressing concerns aggressively. At least it seems like so far. Now, there may be other things that I haven't seen yet. So if you notice something they're not doing, Bungie or Sony, leave me a comment down below and let me know. And so I can, keep track of this. But right now it appears that they are aggressively addressing player concerns, which I think is a positive. The early buzz, the early scores, like I said, were 90%. It's been positive. So far, they've been consistent in their player count, and these are positives. Like I said, I'll just say it again. I don't think Marathon was destined to die a very quick death. I just wonder if it's going to be enough. Again, the market being what it is, and whatever the trail in terms of finances was on developing this, is it going to be enough? So I guess we'll see. But for now, right now, it appears Bungie has come out of the gate. If not like a charging horse, they are at least maintaining a place in the race. Okay, that was a really long segment. I think I wore myself out. I'll try to keep the rest of the stories brief tonight. So next, I'm going to turn to this IGN article from Tuesday the 4th. Capcom trumpets successful Resident Evil Requiem launch, 5 million copies sold. Now, last week I predicted that it would sell 3 million in its first 3 days. It looks like it sold 5 million in its first 5 days. And as the article says, which is another hit for publisher Capcom. There's not a whole lot more to say in this article other than what's said here, just highlighting how well this game has been received. almost everybody I've seen playing it has really enjoyed it. It's been touted as just, this is a return to form for single player games. These are the kind of games gamers want and aren't getting enough of. I think Capcom right now is really positioning themselves to be one of the best, if not the best, AAA games publisher on the market right now. They had great success with this. They've got more Resident Evil games rumored to be remaking. I will find out more as time goes on, but 0, 1 again, Resident Evil 1 a second time, and Code Veronica are the ones I hear most commonly being thrown out. Monster Hunter Wilds didn't do great on PC because of the performance issues, but it was a big hit on PlayStation. It still sold 10 million copies. The Monster Hunter franchise as a whole and the Resident Evil have a long sales trail. They sell a lot year over year. They've got this new IP, Pragmata, which I think is supposed to drop next month in April. And if that's a hit, that'll be another feather in their cap. There's a new Onimusha game coming out sometime later this year. Capcom is doing a lot right now. And I'm glad that people are getting good games from them. I just wish they weren't so DRM crazy and unfriendly towards modders. But that's just me. Speaking of games that made a strong first impression, I got to look at this Games Radar article from Thursday, the 5th of March. Slay the Spire 2 flies past 165,000 concurrent Steam players, instantly nearly tripling the all-time peak for the original roguelike icon and dethroning Marathon as Steam's top-selling game. Well, that didn't last long, did it, Marathon? The rest of this article talks a little bit about more of the game and the history, but this 165,000 number, that's obsolete. Those are rookie numbers. Now flip over to the Steam database chart and you can see right there, 526,000, 500,000 people playing this small indie studio game. 361,000 still in it right now. These indie companies are doing this for a player and sale to cost ratio that the AAA companies could only dream of. I'm going to go back to the article here. It says this brand new sequel, meanwhile, is burning up the Steam charts at launch. A launch price of $25 by concurrent player count. It's the 6th biggest game on Steam, right behind entrenched favorites like Arc Raiders and Rust. Whoops. Okay, that was the old Slay the Spire. Didn't mean to click on that. How many times do we have to say this, though? You give the players what they want at an affordable price, and they will reward you. You see this. You see Sulk Song. You see Schedule 1. You see Balatro. You see, if you want to move into the AA space, Kingdom Come Deliverance and Expedition 33 and Arc Raiders. This isn't rocket science. I don't know why they pretend it is. Now I want to talk about a couple of hardware and console articles, neither of which are definitive, but I think they're both positive if you want to be cautiously optimistic. We'll start with this Game Rant article from Thursday, March 5th. And it says, Xbox reveals code name for next-gen console and it can play PC games. Okay, and it says the internal code name for the next generation of Xbox has been revealed. Then the news comes after all the shakeups and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And the new CEO, Asha Sharma, I'll put it up, the whole tweet here. Great start to the morning with Team Xbox, where we talked about our commitment to the return of Xbox, including Project Helix, the code name for our next-gen console. Project Helix will lead in performance. Play your Xbox and PC games. Looking forward to chatting about this more with partners, etc. So, the fact is that the new CEO of Xbox has come out in less than 2 weeks after taking over and pretty much said, we are committing to Xbox. And the notion that it's also going to play PC games is an interesting one. And let's see, let's scroll down here. Where's the other piece I want to talk about? Let's see. Not that. The announcement of Project Helix, along with the confirmation of Microsoft's plan to integrate PC games into the platform's capabilities, shows the company's commitment to Xbox's future remains steadfast. I don't know about steadfast. Right now, it's just a tweet. We need to see concrete action. We need to see a product. We need to see a viable product that is going to, have committed support to it. So right now, all we have is a tweet. I think if they follow through with this, it's good for Xbox, and we can be cautiously optimistic. But for now, that's as far as I would take it. The second article I want to talk about is this PC Gamer article from Saturday, the 7th of March. Valve quickly updates its own Steam Machine update, recommitting to a 2026 launch despite AI woes. Nothing has really changed on our end. As reported by The Verge, Valve has responded to the confusion about its release for the Steam Frame, controller, and Steam Machine, reaffirming these devices will come out in 2026, despite the AI-driven squeeze on PC hardware. Their year in review post initially made it sound like a 2027 delay was in the cards, but then they came back and said that's not the case. The original wording, we hope to ship in 2026, but we shared recently, memory and storage shortages have created challenges for us. We'll share updates publicly when we finalize our plans. The updated wording, we shared recently there have been challenges with memory and storage shortages, but we will be shipping all 3 products this year. More updates will be shared as we finalize our plans. I think it's a good thing. I think there's a lot of interest in the Steam Machine to see how it's going to compete, not just with PCs, but with also PlayStation and the Xbox and how capable it's going to be. So I know a lot of people are interested in it, and Valve has put a lot into this. So I'm interested to see I'm using the word interested a lot. I'm keen to see how this is going to come out. And it looks like now we will see it in 2026. So again, something to be somewhat optimistic about. Now, this is entertaining, but for all the wrong reasons. This GamesIndustry.biz article from Tuesday, the 4th of March. Build a Rocket Boy confirms more layoffs amid further claims of organized espionage and corporate sabotage. If you're unfamiliar with this situation, first of all, be glad that you're unfamiliar. But the gist of it is that Build a Rocket Boy is a dev studio made up, I think, largely of ex-Rockstar devs at the head of it, at least. They went out and formed their own studio. They released a game called Mind's Eye a few months ago. It did not go well. It's still not going well. And they have claimed, the people that are left in the studio have claimed that they were purposefully sabotaged and undermined by another company. And they're making further redundancies, blaming the games industry's difficult period and corporate sabotage. And they say they've been working with external partners and legal advisors to investigate the criminal activity that took place at launch. And they go on and on and on. They laid off 300 people last June. This has just been an ongoing thing. In fact, here's an article from back in February from a month ago. Mind's Eye co-CEO alleges $1 million was spent in sabotaging the game, will pursue legal action. Now, something that's interesting when I read through these articles, they use the word sabotage, but the actions they describe are slander and smear campaigns. I've not seen any direct allegations that they say that people working on the game purposefully destroyed it and made it not work. Now, this is a key difference to take away. Now, and I'm also going to caveat this by saying I don't know what their criminal complaint that they say they're filing is going to be. It's possible that there was actual sabotage in the game, and in which case that this may not be applicable. But right now, what's the public facing is that they say it's a smear campaign against the game, and that's why it got a bunch of backlash, and that's why it wasn't successful, and that's why it didn't run. Okay, you want to know what the reality is? Mixed reviews, less than half of which were positive. That's how many people are playing this game. That's it. And more people attend an average wedding than are playing this game right now. And it only had a 3,300 player count peak. I saw an estimate that estimated that the game sold a total of less than 50,000 copies. Buggy. People were describing it as buggy. Things were broken. Things were not working. It wasn't fun. I don't care what the smear campaign against your game is. If the game is good, players are going to find it and they're going to play it. At the end. You're just not good. This isn't, unless they're going to allege that they had literally thousands of reviews or hundreds of reviews lodged against them that were fraudulent. Unless they're going to make that case, I think this is all a bunch of hot air. They're flailing in the dark. They've lost millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the studio collapse. Again, like I always say, I don't want that. I don't want studios to collapse. I don't want games to be lost, and I don't want developers out of business. But sometimes you bring this shit on yourself. Now I simply find this one more baffling than anything. This Insider Gaming article from Friday, 6 March, Arc Raiders has been silently recording your Discord DMs. A computer engineer found that once your Discord account was linked to the game, your private messages were being stored locally on your PC, along with full Discord authentication tokens, that could potentially allow unauthorized access. Okay, and there's where Discord responds, and they say, thankfully, Embark Studios was quick to roll out an update. It's claimed that the Discord SDK logged excessive user information, though they failed to mention how that was managed. Bet they did. A hotfix has been rolled out for Arc Raiders, which prevents this from happening again. The community was assured their personal data was not sent outside their machines, and that Embark did not review or keep such information. This just keeps happening. That you keep finding your private data is being used by these companies. And I don't know how much coincidence they expect us to swallow that all of these things are quote unquote accidental. Just a reminder that even when you're using something like Discord DMs, any information you put out there on the internet is never wholly private. There's always potential that somebody's watching. So just watch yourselves out there. Okay, I filed this one under a potential problem. Not certain yet. This GameSpot article from Tuesday, March 4th. We're not hiding anything. Crimson Desert rep says as players demand console footage. A Crimson Desert rep has responded to players on X and Reddit after being accused of hiding footage of the game. Will Powers is the PR and marketing director at Pearl Abyss, Crimson Desert's developer. While the company has shared quite a bit about the upcoming action-adventure game, most of the footage has been the PC version. And after somebody said that Pearl Abyss was hiding all console footage, they started an argument. And Will Powers here says, we're not hiding anything, and I'm sick of having to repeat myself. I've repeated hundreds of times we'll reveal things ahead of launch to give people adequate time to still pre-order the game for themselves. We're saying this openly. Let us cook, please, and thank you. What bothers me here is the lack of transparency and openness. I believe Crimson Desert is supposed to release on the 19th of March. So as of the posting of this video, it's 11 days from now. And if they're not openly sharing console footage, that should be concerning to console players. Sometimes these things work to one side or the other. But I've referenced several times recently that Monster Hunter Wilds obviously had a lot of optimization problems on PC, ran well on console. But I also remember when Cyberpunk 2077 released, and it was the opposite, that it was almost unplayable on things like PS4, and the PC players, for the most part, didn't have the same types of problems. The fact that they're not showing the footage less than 2 weeks out from the release date is a little concerning and troubling. So if you're a console player, I certainly think this is something that bears in mind, and maybe you should hesitate before pre-ordering. I think that you're right as a consumer, and you have to do what's comfortable for you. I certainly wouldn't fault you for it, because that's what I would do. I only referenced this because we knew it was coming. This was announced earlier this week. Highguard is shutting down for good. It is going to be closing its servers on the 12th of March. So basically, it lasted 45 days from launch. I said last week this game was finished. It really now is just a question of how long Wildlight Entertainment is going to last. I don't think very long. It's unfortunate, but like I said earlier, sometimes these studios inflict these disasters on themselves, and here we are. So, just closing the loop. This will be the last time I talk about Highguard. I'm reasonably certain this time. All right, I'm going to wrap this up with what I think are two pieces of good news. And Lord knows we could use some at this point. There's this Insider Gaming article from Thursday, March 5th. Pragmata being released 1 week earlier. It's saying that it will have its release week 1 week earlier. Capcom announced that it will now launch on April 17th rather than April 24th. It is launching on consoles, Steam, Nintendo Switch, and so on. And that's, I think this is cool. I like these types of companion games where you have a useful companion with you, like BioShock Infinite with Elizabeth, or your first run through Nier Automata, where 2B has 9A with her as a companion frequently. I like that. And of course, me being a Fallout fan, I always like to have dog meat with me. So I like companion games where the companions are useful. And the concept of this one looked good to me. So I normally don't buy games on release day, but I always wait to see how things turn out because of performance issues. And in Capcom's case, it's always a toss up if I want to give myself the headache of dealing with the DRM. Not because I'm obsessed with the performance issues, but out of principle. I don't really like supporting games with DRM. So I may not jump on this right away, but I am interested in it, and I'm interested to see it's coming out. It's coming out a week early, so that'll be good to see. After that, I want to flip over to this IGN article from Wednesday, March 4th. And I think I said Tuesday, March 4th a couple times in this video, so I apologize. Ubisoft finally confirms Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake we all knew was coming. And this is what they had said in their, let's see, where was it that they just posed? The first piece of concept art, finally confirming its remake. Oh, in the blog post. Okay, this is what they said in the blog post. Speculation around ACE is not new, but it's worth repeating. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Well, except in this case, some whispers have a little more wind in their sails. Keep your spyglass on the horizon. I think this is great news for Assassin's Creed fans and game fans in general. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that in a general sentiment, I know it's going to vary by individual, but in a general sentiment, Black Flag is probably the most beloved Assassin's Creed game. So getting a remake, put an asterisk on that, if they do it right, would be a big boon for Ubisoft, and it would be great for gamers who want to get that experience again. So having some confirmation along with the concept art there, right here, I blow that up, yeah. So having some confirmation along with the concept art, and that's good news for gamers. And I can't wait to see how that one works out as well. Okay, I think I am done for tonight. If you notice, I'm fighting off the yawns, and my allergies are still working on me, so I'm going to call this quits. As always, I appreciate you tuning in for the video. If you did enjoy this content, please consider leaving a like on it. Drop me a comment down below if you think I missed a major news story this week, or if you agree or disagree with anything I covered. I don't mind it if you disagree. I love to hear the discourse around games. I just like to talk about it, so feel free to comment down below. If you are enjoying this content, please consider ringing the bell for notifications so you'll know when I upload something new. And please consider subscribing. It only takes one click and it helps me out a whole bunch. Okay, like I said, I'm going to call this quits. I'm still working on other stuff for the channel. And as always, I'll be back here next week with more Quick Bird news and try and keep you folks updated on what's going on. So until then, thank you once again for tuning in. You all go out there, live your best lives, and you all stay gaming.